talk about things for a long time before we decide. And so there were 13 original colonies, and then we were the 14th state. We did talk about that a while, because after all, we could have gone to New York or Canada, but we decided we'd join the other 13. And Vermont has mountains right up and down the center. For 14 years, while we talked about it, we put the capital on one side of the mountains one year, the other side of the mountains the other, in different towns so as not to hurt anybody's feelings. We went back and forth for 14 years. Finally, Montpelier said, now listen, we have a piece of land. We even saved some money to help you build a capital. Build it here. So they built this first capital, which was small and wooden and worked because we only had a unicameral system. But then in the 1830s, they decided they wanted both the Senate and the House, and there just really wasn't room enough for it in this building, which was just down the street. So they built the second capitol, which was on this spot, and as you can see, it didn't last very long. It was finished in 1836, and in 1857, the custodian built up a fire underneath in January for a meeting and went home for dinner, and when he came back, the building was burning down. Oh, sort of typical for the 1800s. So that led to the building you're in now, which was finished in 1859. There are two things they saved from this building. One is the front portico. It's the same portico that was on this building. They saved it and put it on this one. This one's a little bigger, a little taller. But they were then very concerned about fire. So the whole outside of the building is granite. The inside is brick covered with plaster. Those columns and the stairs are cast iron, and the floor is marble. And we're still here, so that's a good thing, right? Now, all the stone except for one piece in the building came from Vermont. The white came from Danby, Vermont, which is in the south of Vermont. The black came from Alamont, which is in the middle of Lake Champlain, and is the oldest fossil reef in the world. So here is fossils. And come over here and I'll show you the best one.
Oh, is that the spot? That's the spot. That's the spot. Beautiful shepherd. Yes.
Not bad for 500 million years old, and we walk on it, right?
Yeah.
So there were two presidents born in Vermont, both first elected vice president. This is the better known of the two, Calvin Coolidge, and he grew up in Plymouth Notch, Vermont. And interestingly enough, he was elected vice president when Harding was president. Harding was in California visiting friends and died. Calvin was visiting his parents in Plymouth Notch. And there was one phone in Plymouth Notch. They called and nobody answered. So they sent somebody in the middle of the night to knock on the door and say, "You're president." And his father said, "Well, I know what happens when you become president. And after all, I am an elected official. I'm a justice of the peace." He took out the family Bible, had his son put his hand on it, and swore him in for president of the United States. Now they did swear him in again when they got to Washington, just to make sure it was legal. But I think that was very cool for his father to show. Swear it in. And over here is the second cabinet. This is Chester Arthur, and he did most of his political career in New York, and he was elected vice president when Garfield was president. So, interestingly enough, he was born at the very top of Vermont, so Garfield was shot, if you remember. He lingered a while, but after he died and Chester Arthur became president, people who didn't like him said, "We don't think you were born in the United States. We think you were born in Canada. You'll have to show your birth certificate to prove you were born." Now, haven't we heard that read?
Yes.
So what goes around comes around, I think. There we have it. And over here is Madeline Kuhman. And I must say, she's our only so far female governor, but we're working on that, right? She was born in Switzerland. She became ambassador to Switzerland after she was governor. There's no requirement here that you be born in the United States to be governor. And actually, we have very little requirements. You might remember we had a 15, 16-year-old run for governor just a few years ago because there's no age requirement. He didn't win, but nonetheless, he could run. So there you have it. So this is the Senate. 30 people in the Senate. Interestingly enough, in Vermont, everyone is up for election every 2 years. You can stay as long as you want, but every 2 years you have to be reelected. The legislature meets from January to May. It's a part-time legislature, so most everybody else has another job besides here. This room would like you to think you're under the dome, but you're not. It's shaped like a capital D. That wall's flat, circles around. So these seats and up above are for guests. Anytime during the legislative session, which is January to May, you may come and watch. This room, and actually almost all the furniture in the building, is from 1859. So this has been reupholstered, but besides that, 1859. And because of that, the Senate and the House are the two oldest chambers in the United States in the original condition in which they were in and used for the same purpose. So if you go to Virginia, you'll find an older building, but it'll be a museum. This looks exactly like it did in 1859, and we use it exactly like we did in 1859. The original building was lit by gas. So if you look at that chandelier, at those little elbows, there's a gold key. Someone would have had to come in, turn it and light it, turn it and light it every morning. Now it's electric. And the interesting thing about this chandelier is it's got a nautical theme. It's got seahorses and Neptune and really? This is Vermont. We're a landlocked state, so it is sort of funny. But somebody must have seen it, thought it was pretty, which it is, and purchased it. The other interesting fact about it is the sergeant-at-arms, who's the person in charge of the building, decided about 50, 60 years in that it was too fussy to dust. So he took it down and put it in a barn down the street. And then we hired a curator because we consider this a museum even though we use it all the time. And the curator went to all the buildings to find all the things that related to the Capitol, found it, and hung it back up. So see those two little stools? If you are an 8th grader in the state of Vermont, you may be a page in the Senate or the House. You would sit there on one of those couches. You would copy things for the Senate or pass out papers or help in any way you could. And we hope you learned something about the government. Do you remember shag carpet? There was some shag in here, but the curator had pictures of the original carpet and color samples. So he had carpet produced to be exactly like it was in 1859. So I always like to say, guess this is what was in 1859.
Now, what are those two white things over there? Those stamps?
That's what I was looking at too.
Those
Between the lamps.
Between the lamps are two holders holding stamps.
Oh, stamps,
yes. So when documents are done, we still stamp them.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate lots of the world has gone to electronics, but Vermont still stamps away.
Huh.
Actually, the Senate is particularly fussy. That's not why we're not going inside. And until the pandemic, there were no electronics allowed in the Senate. You couldn't even bring in your cell phone. And then came the pandemic, and they weren't here. So they had to put up big screens in here for the people that were on Zoom, and the small screens came in. Before that, there was no electronics in this room. Come this way. So this is Emily. Edna Beard, she was the first woman elected to the Vermont legislature just after women got the vote. And this is Consuelo Bailey, and she was the first female lieutenant governor. This is the House chamber. They're not quite as fussy. So come on in, have a seat, pretend you're a legislator. And
Okay.
the only thing I'll say is it's the furniture is from 1859. So if you lean back, it may feel like you're going to fall, but you won't. I warned you. Okay, the house. See, the house has 150 people. Also, up for election every 2 years. Everybody. At the front of this room, you will see a picture of George Washington. Remember downstairs I said there were 2 things they saved from the fire. And the front portico, and for reasons I cannot explain, the men of Montpelier rushed into the building, took that picture of George Washington off the wall, and saved it for when this building was finished to hang back up. Lovely thought. It's a copy. It's not even an original. But it is George Washington, so I'm sure that's why they saved it. Over that picture is the insignia of Vermont. You might have heard of Ethan Allen, who fought the British. His brother, Ira Allen, designed that insignia and has in it what I like to say are the things we love. So it has mountains and evergreen trees and cows and hay. And the reason I point it out particularly is because this chandelier, unlike the one in the Senate, was made for this room. And we know that because in these little curlicues on the bottom, and each one is that insignia of Vermont. So someone must have commissioned this chandelier to be made for this room. See, in each one of those little things is the insignia of Vermont. And if you follow it up to the top, there's one of those old-fashioned, I guess I'll call it, plaster ceilings. And that lotus blossom at the top, each one of those petals weighs 500 pounds. So there's a metal bar from each one up to the wooden structure at the top so that it doesn't fall on you. Okay. Now, on each side of the podium are 2 benches. They look like individual chairs. There are 30 seats. So when there's a joint session of the House and the Senate comes and sits in those seats. The House remains in the seats they're in. This room is not divided in any way politically like Democrats or Republicans. They're sort of all mixed up. So if one person is reelected, they keep their seat. If the person next to them is not, that seat goes up sort of in a grab bag for who's coming in next. The other interesting thing about the legislature in Vermont is by percentage, it has the largest percentage of third-party people of any state in the United States. We have progressives and independents. After all, Vermont produced Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie was never in this room because he was never elected to a state office. He went from being mayor of Burlington directly to Washington, D.C., where he's our senator. Oh, the other thing I want to point out before we leave this room is that I like to think of Vermonters as a little frugal. We just don't like spending our money. And if you go to most capitals, on either side will be big office buildings. We do not give our legislators an office. So the only thing they've got is this desk in front of them. So if you came January to May, it would be probably piled with pages of something and maybe a banana, because there's no place else but here to keep anything.
They keep things in here?
Well, they do when they're here. Not very much room, but that's where they keep it.
No, sure not.
So are they allowed to bring a computer, laptop?
Actually, that's an interesting question because the Senate never allowed any electronics until the pandemic. The House has always had laptops and iPads, cell phones, and all those things. I'd like to stop here and point out this picture taken of the Capitol just after it was built, because if you look behind the Capitol, there are very few trees. In 1859, most of Vermont was pasture. Now, most of it is forested. This hallway has pictures of former governors. Now, you won't see a picture of the governor now, who is Phil Scott. And that's because, remember that frugality issue? It is our custom that when you are done being governor, you could have your picture painted and we'll hang it.
Oh, I can tell you every one of these. I recognize every single one.
Wow.
Dean Davis. James Douglas.
He's still on the board? Pardon me?
We were just talking about my governors.
I
James,
don't know that.
James Douglas, was that? He'd be pretty old, you know.
He is. He was here the other day. He joined one of my tours.
Oh, did he?
But he is. He teaches, and that's why he was here. He was bringing his class. to
Oh.
the tour.
He's not that old.
This is the governor's office. So the governor works full-time, unlike the legislature. So 2 buildings over is the pavilion. That's the building with the big white porch. He has a whole floor. He has a staff. That's where he spends a lot of his time. But when the legislature's in session, he comes into this office to be close to the legislature. Now, I said most of the furniture in the building is from 1859. This desk is not. Something happened to the governor's desk, and they wanted a big one. This is a partner desk. There are drawers on that side and drawers on that side. It's made for 2 people, but the governor uses it because it's big. The other interesting thing in this room is this chair. When the building was built in 1859, there was a Vermonter in the Navy of high rank, and he wanted to send the governor and the building a gift. And so the U.S. Constitution, which is the oldest commissioned ship in the U.S. Navy, sits in Boston Harbor, was being recommissioned. He asked for original lumber from the U.S. Constitution and made this chair out of that lumber. So here's that insignia of Vermont again, and that's from the U.S. Constitution. The other interesting thing about this room is this lamp. I didn't point it out in the house, but there are statues in the chandelier and around the sconces at the end representing things as this is a Greek slave, but also courage and patience are things they represent. And so it was sculpted by a man by the name of Hiram Power, and they did a lamp to go on the governor's desk. What's interesting is several governors ago, the governor's staff decided this was an inappropriate lamp to go on the governor's desk. So they took it off and put it in a closet. When the next governor came, he said, really, where's the Hiram Power lamp? And they took it back out. Now what's interesting to me is they thought it was inappropriate because she was nude, not because she was a slave in chains.
Yeah, like that. Huh.
Black beard. That's funny. Because he doesn't have
Yes,
much.
The longer he's here, the more things he collects.
Yeah.
He actually owns a construction company, and I suspect, but don't know, that that little piece came from kids that visit. He's very good with kids when they come to visit. Did you know they're having a performance at 1 o'clock? That Derek is supposed to hold a large cube that's supposed to have some sort of a performance in it. Interestingly enough, all the doors in the State House are made of Vermont pine, but apparently the architects did not like the look of Vermont pine. I like it. You know that front door, if you came in that way, it's supposed to look big and brassy. And this, they covered to look like mahogany. What can I tell you? This is another one of those rugs or carpets. I think it's interesting. It's bright and sort of looks Pennsylvania Dutchy to me. Since all of the governors get to choose their own person who's painting their portrait and decide on what it looks like, it's interesting to me. So Governor Douglas right there, it sort of looks like a photograph, right? Whereas Governor Aiken over there on the stairs looks more impressionistic. Okay, come on in and turn your attention to this oil painting. During the Civil War, a young man by the name of Julian Scott, when he was 15 years old, joined the Union forces as a drummer boy. The first battle he went to, he was wounded. And while he was recovering, he began sketching what he saw. This was his first oil painting. It was the rear guard at White Oak Swamp. Not particularly a significant battle, except when the Vermont legislature saw this. They commissioned him to do this. This is the Battle of Cedar Creek. More Vermont soldiers fought in the Battle of Cedar Creek than any other battle in the Civil War. It took place in Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley. He also designed the frame. In the four corners of the frame are shields with the names of battles that Vermont soldiers fought in during the Civil War. And there's the insignia of Vermont. It's sort of dark and gloomy, but the Civil War was dark and gloomy. Interestingly enough, this painting used to be in the governor's office. We won't even discuss how they got it from the governor's office into here, but this room was originally the state library. Then there was a problem. Remember, that's legality. We do not give our governor a house or a mansion, as some of you do. We expect the governor to live in their own house. The problem that caused was when somebody important came, there was no place to receive them. So they decided they needed a reception room in the Capitol. So they took all the books out of here, put them in the building next door, which became the state library. That's why this room has a little different decor than the rest of the building. They decided to give it a military theme. And if you were here and somebody important was here, there'd probably be long tables with white tablecloths and food on it, because they'd be using this as a reception. The other interesting thing in this room are these skylights. When they took the books out, the skylights were covered with lumber. When they took the wood down, they discovered the frame was there, but the glass was gone. And the curator was trying to decide who he commissioned make new stained glass to go in. And he was up in the attic walking around, he heard crunching under his feet. He was stepping on these pieces of glass. So this one, as you can see, was sent away and put back together. So they are the original glass that was in there. One more.
Term limit for the governor.
No.
There isn't.
There isn't.
The one we have now has been there almost 10 years. Sort of like the House and the Senate. Every 2 years you have to be re-elected and stay. In this room, there's a corridor to the front of the House chamber, resulting in this room being lovingly called the card room, because the legislators used to come in here and play cards until the vote was taken, and then they could go back in. Hi, you're welcome to join us. We're almost at the end of the tour, but this room has usually a rotating art display, a new one just now. The other interesting thing about this room is this fireplace. Now remember, I said the legislature goes from January to May, part-time, everybody has another job. When the building was built, somebody sold the marble. And he donated samples of Vermont marble to go in this fireplace. Now I do think it's lovely that I can show you that, but I can't resist thinking, did he come out and say, I could get you a little pink, or did you want a little black? When the Capitol was built, the dome was red. It was painted red to look like the roofs of Italy. About 50, 60 years in, somebody thought gold would be nice. Now it's covered by gold leaf. It's redone every 35, 40 years. Now, you are standing in the smallest capital in the United States. A little under 8,000 people live here. And it's the only one without a McDonald's. Come this way. We're going to stop here before we go downstairs. Just because I'd like to introduce you to Governor Huff. Now, interestingly enough, Vermonters are thought about as being Democratic in preference to Republican. We were actually Republicans until Governor Huff was elected in the 1960s. He was young, he had a young staff, and there's something in this portrait you won't see in another portrait. He has a cigarette in his hand.
Oh,
We consider that sort of amusing in that it was 1960s. Have you ever seen the television program Mad Men? That period, small lapel, small tie, and everybody had a cigarette. And the reason it's interesting is Vermont was one of the first states to ban cigarette smoking in federal buildings, then state buildings, and then restaurants and all over the place. So it's sort of amusing that it happens. Actually, since then, we sort of go back and forth who we elect. Sometimes we elect a Democratic governor, sometimes the Republican governor. I'd like to say we vote for the person, not the party. Maybe it's just we got annoyed with the last party and we're going to the other. Who knows? We generally have a Democratic House and Senate majority. On downstairs.
I knew his wife well.
Did you?
She smoked like a fiend too.
He did. Oh,
His wife did. Yeah.
You know, somebody asked the other day, well, he probably died of lung cancer. I said, no, he just died and he was 99 years
Really?
old.
Oh my goodness.
Stop right here. This is a portrait of Governor Dean. I've heard of Governor Dean. He ran for president. Interestingly enough, this portrait, when it was unveiled, was a little scandalous on 2 counts. It's pretty big. And the second one is that it's the only portrait of a male governor not in a suit and tie. He chose to be portrayed doing what he loved. And he loves to canoe on Lake Champlain. He's still alive, lives south of Burlington, and was for a while the head of the Democratic Party. The people in this house lovingly call this L.L. Bean. What do you think? Doesn't he look like he could go right on the cover of L.L. Bean?
Yes.
Well, thank you for wandering around the Capitol with me.
Thank you.
You're very welcome to go back to any place we've been that doesn't have a rope on it. So
Yes.
have a great day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
very welcome.